Chapter 1, Introduction to Rural Living. This section of the book is for people that are not used to rural life. They need to choose where to live and what will be different from the city. This can also help long-time rural residents choose where their new home will be. Moving into a rural area can be the biggest expense of living in the country. The driving disadvantage. The importance of a vehicle. Shopping, working, and visiting. All of these everyday activities require a mode of transportation. In the country, the vehicle is the main link to the home and everything the house needs to run. Maintaining a job without transportation would be impossible. Most people in rural areas have large or small farms and require hauling feed, hay, and straw. Imagine carrying multiple grocery bags for over 2 hours. Most of the groceries in that situation would no longer be edible. The arms of the person hauling the groceries would be aching. However, groceries and other necessities still need to make it home. Rural life requires a vehicle. Little public transportation. School buses and paramedic services are the only forms of public transportation for small towns and those living in the woods. Even then, some houses must use a personal vehicle to meet the school bus. Larger towns may have a bus line, but it only runs on certain days and only makes 2 to 5 stops. These bus lines may connect 1 to 3 large towns, but only if they are a small distance from each other. Distance between towns. Small towns may be minutes apart by car, but can be 10 minutes apart on foot. Also, the houses in the forests may have to walk 30 minutes to reach one of the small towns. The roads in the small towns are paved, but many of the back roads from the houses in the woods to town are made of dirt. The larger towns can be 15 minutes driving and hours on foot. Walking these distances is not an issue if done for leisure. If walking to a job or shopping, then these distances are intolerable. All of these roads are paved and connect to a highway. Walking on the highways is dangerous and illegal in some states. The type of vehicle matters. Rural roads are not well maintained. These roads may get flooded or piled with snow. The vehicle chosen for these areas must be dependable and 4-wheel drive. Trucks or SUVs are the most common transport for a rural family. Small, cute cars can get trapped in driveways or even on the highway. For houses in the hills or on the mountain roads, the vehicle needs to be 4-wheel drive to ascend to the house. When choosing, choose a vehicle with 4-wheel drive, but good gas mileage. This truck or SUV will be used a lot and gas is expensive. It is a necessary expense to get the supplies to the house. Types of housing. Apartments are not common in rural areas. Most people own their own land or rent houses. Some rent shared houses. Choosing the house to live in can be a big decision. Rural residents may already own the home and may need to make improvements. Cabins. When people think of rural living, they picture a cabin in the middle of a beautiful forest. Cabins are more rare than many people think. Their structure is no longer manageable for the modern homeowner. Size is an issue. Most have only 1 to 2 bedrooms unless the homeowner adds on. But these would be excellent for a small family. Many people start their families in cabins and then have modern houses built. These homes have thin walls and require insulation and thicker walls added. The roofs are almost flat. These flat roofs gather leaves and branches and need to be cleaned off every few months. Snow may also cause an issue in winter, and the homeowner needs to clear the snow off before it weighs too much. Cabins that were everywhere in rural areas 100 years ago are now transformed into more modern houses or were torn down. The basic shape is kept, but the beams and other interior designs are altered to allow more space and light. If wealthy enough, a person can have a log cabin built, but this is not a possibility for most people. A better option is to purchase an old cabin and renovate it. These renovations can be affordable, especially when using lumber from the local lumber yards. Raised ranch. A common house for the forests is the mid-century raised ranch. Whereas the towns have more cookie-cutter type housing, the wooded areas have more unique homes. One of these is the raised ranch. It is similar to a cabin in design, but has an A-line roof. They were built throughout rural areas from 1960 to 1980. The structure is sound, and the roof allows snow and leaves to roll off. The basements were well built, but need to be sealed to prevent water damage. The size in this style of housing can also be small. They have 3 to 5 rooms and can have 1 to 2 bathrooms. A family member usually gives people that already live in rural areas a vehicle, or they may have to get by with a cheap little car until they can afford a truck or SUV. Farmhouses. These were built to support large families. They can have 5 to 10 bedrooms and 1 to 2 bathrooms. Many of these were built long ago and have been updated through the years. They have thin walls, and there is difficulty heating them. Renovations would include adding insulation and better heat supply throughout the home. The new homeowner would also want to update plumbing and electrical. Commonly sold with the farmhouses are the farms. The new owner would decide to start a farm, or they could rent out the land. If the property is good, someone could make money off a well-run farm. Choosing the proper property. The type of property depends on the future the person wants. It is the starting point to whatever dream the owner wants to accomplish. There are many deciding factors and things to look at. Water. Rural areas may or may not have city water. This means the water supply must come from somewhere. There could be a river, creek, spring, or well. These would not only supply the house with water, but may also be used to water plants or animals. The landowner may want a small pond if they wish to own ducks or geese. If the owner wants an off-grid lifestyle, then they need to choose a place with plenty of water. A river or creek could provide hydropower. A spring can water the farm animals, or have a spring house built around it. The spring house would act as a refrigerator. Soil. If planting a farm, or even a small garden in the yard, soil is important. Some parts of the rural area may have unusable soil and cannot grow anything. This bad soil will not even support grass, making the yard look terrible. People raised on property with bad soil can use manure from nearby farms to improve it. The manure is cheap, and it only takes 1 to 2 years to turn bad soil into great soil. Good soil is from farms and forests. The organic matter breaks down to create that beautiful, soft, black soil that can grow almost anything. Acreage. This is the amount of land being purchased. A small family with only the desire to gaze at the gorgeous scenery and maybe grow a few plants doesn't need much acreage. If it's not needed, then it shouldn't be purchased. A lot of acres means a lot of taxes. If the purchaser would like to start a farm, then they need to decide what kind of farm and the size. Cattle farms need 10 to 100 acres, but goat and sheep farms need only 1 to 2 acres. Growing crops takes 2 to 4 acres, depending on the crops grown. Also, the owner may want to own woods to hunt and to use as lumber. These woods would need to be 4 to 15 acres. Housing and a yard only takes 0.25 acres. Unless the owner would like a large yard complete with volleyball nets, swimming pool, and other fun activities. The perfect size for that family would be 1 acre. That leaves enough room for the family to add a shed or chicken coop to the property. In-town housing only has small yards. These yards are still big enough to plant a small garden and allow children to play. To make up for the small yards, there are large playgrounds in the small towns. Location. If the perfect house has just the right amount of land, it may be perfect, or it may be in the wrong area. There could be no city water, TV, or internet. The house may be too far from town and supplies. The location also depends on what the goal of the land is. If the owner wants to live off-grid, then they would want to live in the forest. However, if the goal is to grow a family or just start out, then they may want to start in a town. Things to keep in mind are the access roads, water, and distance to supplies. There are also utilities that are must-haves for some people. Large towns have most of the utilities of cities, and may be a more appropriate jump from the city to the country.